How to shield yourself from business debt. This is, in fact, is a very common question, and it's one of the reasons many people come to a lawyer to help set up their business and establish it, is they want to make sure that if something goes wrong in the business, if there is a lot of debt, either a business failure, perhaps a lawsuit, or something else unanticipated, they want to protect themselves and have a shield from the partnership debt or the business debt. So what we do typically is set up a legal entity that houses the business operations. And now that may be an LLC, maybe a corporation, could be a limited partnership, could be a couple different structures. What we're generally going to try to avoid under the laws of most states is a general partnership. Because a general partnership, which is not an incorporated entity, doesn't have those liability firewalls in generally. Basically, the partners have unlimited liability to reach into their personal assets. Depending on the state law, you may or may not have to exhaust the partnership assets before you reach into people's personal assets, but the exposure is certainly there in unincorporated entities. So the first layer is to form an incorporated entity, whether it's an LLC, corporation, or some other form such as a limited partnership, maybe a double LP, even a triple LP, different forms of partnerships that have that extra layer of protection. But the general partnership, as we spoke about earlier, generally doesn't have that protection. Now, once you're within that entity, there are things you need to do. There's a concept out there called veil piercing, and that concept basically says a court can potentially look through an entity and say it's not a real entity and then attack the personal assets of the owners. Now, this is an extremely rare remedy. It doesn't happen very often unless you're very sloppy or you're just not careful or you just don't set things up right. That's why you want to get some good help to make sure you have things structured right and you're thinking about the potential for veil piercing and addressing that risk. But if veil piercing happens, the court will disregard the entity, and then potentially we again have exposure for the owner's personal assets. Things like fraud, things like not respecting formalities, not actually forming your entity, those types of issues are the types of factors that courts will take into account. And generally, a veil piercing is a multi-factor analysis. If you read the case law in a lot of states, and of course it's going to vary by state, which is why you want to talk to a lawyer that's licensed in a jurisdiction you're building your business in. But if you look at those veil piercing cases, they're looking at usually a variety of factors and the totality of how things are coming together. It's not like one thing is necessarily going to lead to veil piercing, although what will happen is when the totality of circumstances add up, a court that does do this veil piercing will basically usually hang its hat on one or two factors which are very prominent. So you want to get some good advice. You want to build the structure sound. This is where you want good books, records, separate bank accounts. Keep that LLC formed with your state. Keep up current on all your filings. If you're a corporation, follow the requirements for board meetings and minutes, etc. So you want to make sure you have somebody on your team that's really looking over your shoulder. That's going to be a lawyer that's licensed in your jurisdiction, experienced in business law. Will be a great choice to help you do that. So sit down with them, build a plan. But if you do it right, you should be able to protect those assets. Now, one caveat on it, of course, is as you're very small and just getting started, many lenders, credit card companies, etc., are going to want personal guarantees. So they're going to say, great, you have an entity that's wonderful, but we want you to put yourself behind this to make sure that you can backstop this financially. We don't want to just rely on the credit of your newly formed entity. So that's kind of a contractual exception to that liability protection. So you want to take that into account as well. Build the right team, get the structure right on the first, and then that way you can protect yourself going forward. If you have questions, go ahead and drop them below. But remember, comments that you post on social media are not confidential. Other people may see them. So don't put things in there you wouldn't want other people reading. But I do look forward to reading your comments and questions. And I hope you subscribe to the channel so that we can join each other for another video again very soon.